Hi everyone, I'm Cass and this is the Mind Your Being podcast, a space where we'll explore health and what it really means to care for our whole being, our physical, mental and emotional health. Each episode you'll hear from leading health and wellness experts or everyday people who share powerful insights and lived experience. And sometimes it'll be just me, sharing thoughts, tools and reflections from my own journey. More than anything, I want you to feel supported, encouraged and empowered to make informed health choices that feel right for you. If this sounds good to you, please enjoy. Welcome to Mind Your Being. Today's episode is a solo one. And before we get into it, I just wanted to shout out listeners from a few areas around the world. And they are Saxy in Texas, Santa Rosa in California, and Madrid in Madrid. Thank you all for taking the time out to listen today. I hope you're enjoying the content on Mind Your Being. So today's episode is inspired by conversations I had earlier in the week when I attended a Perimenopause expo here in my local community. So I had an exhibitor stand with Mind Your Being, and many women were generous enough to come up and share a conversation. And I asked them what they really wanted to know about peri and menopause, what topics they'd like to hear on the podcast, what topics they found it hard to get information on. And while everyone's experience is different, there were a few common themes. And one that came up quite frequently was a number of women told me that they felt like they didn't quite know who they were anymore. And it struck me that this stage of life invites us to pause and ask, what actually matters to me now? What are my priorities? What gives me meaning? How do I want to live my life going forward? As I was reflecting on these conversations, I was thinking that rather than see menopause just for what we lose, I thought that it also presents an opportunity at this time of life to gently begin to see it as a reset of sorts, a natural transition point, a moment for us to reflect and to consider how we want to live our lives in this next chapter. And maybe you felt that too, a sense of feeling a little unsure, sometimes a little disconnected from yourself, or even wondering, who am I now? So you might have spent years showing up for everyone else, meeting expectations, caring for others, holding things together, and somewhere along the way, feeling a little further away from yourself. So today I want to gently explore something that can help guide us in times like this, and that is our values. Now, this isn't about having all the answers, but it is an invitation to pause, to reflect, and to consider whether the life we're living is aligned with what truly matters to us. So, what do we actually mean by values? Well, values are the qualities or principles that matter most to us. They're not goals. They're not things we achieve or tick off a list. They're more like directions we move in, a way of showing up in our lives. For example, a goal might be, I want to get a promotion. But underneath that, the value might be something like growth or contribution or learning. Another example might be the goal of, I want to run a marathon. But the values underlying that goal could be health, vitality, or challenge. Or another goal might be, I want to host more dinners. Well, underlying that goal might be values like connection or community or love. So a simple way to think about it is goals are destinations and values are directions. And values act like an internal compass. They help guide how we spend our time, where we place our energy, and how we make decisions. I'm going to attach a list of values in the episode show notes, or if you Google it online, there are many, many lists of values out there, so you can start to have a look at some of the values I'm talking about. But I'll just quickly run through a few examples of what values might be. Things like connection, kindness, curiosity, creativity, honesty, integrity, growth, community, learning, authenticity, and compassion. Now, that's just a slice of the values that you'll see on a values worksheet. Just to give you an example, I'll share a few of mine. I really highly value curiosity, learning, education. And so doing this podcast is a way for me to live those values in my life. And another one is I really value connection. And again, the podcast is a way that I practice connection through sharing conversations with people on the podcast, through communicating with you, listening right now, but also in my friendships and my family, like making time for people. So something I wanted to clarify is that values are personal. They're not external expectations. So our values are ours. They're not based on what other people expect of us. They're not what society says we should prioritize. They're not what we've always done or what we've been praised for. They're the things that feel deeply meaningful to us. And sometimes, especially in midlife, we realize we've been living for a long time according to roles, according to responsibilities and expectations. And when have we paused to ask ourselves, what actually matters to me now? Well, I'm suggesting that this is a perfect time in midlife, where we are right now, to stop and ask ourselves, who are we? What is meaningful to us? So I want to touch on why values matter. Why am I talking about this? Well, there's a lot of psychological research that shows when we're living in alignment with our values, we tend to experience a greater sense of meaning, more internal contentment, and a stronger sense of who we are. So without that clarity, life can sometimes feel busy but not deeply fulfilling. Like we're moving from one task to the next without a strong sense of why. We're just on autopilot a lot of the time. Whereas when our actions reflect what matters to us, there can be a greater sense of intention and a sense that your life feels more like your own. And this is different from short-term pleasure because we can all experience moments of pleasure, moments where we buy something new, achieving something, ticking something off a list. But those moments can be fleeting, whereas values-based living is more about a deeper, steadier sense of fulfillment, a sense that my life reflects what matters to me. So in acceptance and commitment therapy, known as ACT, it recognises that having a sense of purpose is vital for human flourishing and that this really comes back to identifying our values. It invites us to consider questions like, what do I want my life to be about? What really matters to me? There's also research from ACT that shows when people clarify their values and then take actions aligned with them, they often experience less psychological distress, greater resilience, and more meaningful engagement with life, even when things are hard. And I think that's an important point because living in alignment with your values doesn't mean life suddenly becomes easy, but it can help you navigate life with a greater sense of direction. And on that resilience point, some studies show that even briefly reflecting on your personal values can help buffer in times of stress. It can help you feel more grounded, more centered, because you're reconnecting with what really matters. So even in challenging moments, values can act like an anchor. They don't remove the stress, but they can help you move through it in a way that feels more aligned with who you want to be. So for example, if you're feeling overwhelmed, but one of your core values is connection, choosing to reach out to a friend, even if it's only briefly, it might not remove the stress, but it can help you feel supported and help you feel more yourself within it. So I mentioned before, midlife really is a transition point because this stage of life often comes with a lot of change. For many years, we've been growing, learning, building careers, caring for others, meeting expectations. And then we arrive here and things begin to shift. If we have children, they may become more independent. Roles within the household and the workplace may change. Our bodies are changing. Our energy certainly feels different. And sometimes there can be a sense of exhaustion or a burnout. It's that quiet wondering of where you fit now beyond the roles you've held for so long. And so when we find ourselves asking, who am I now? Rather than seeing that as something to fear, because it's very common in this stage for people to reevaluate their priorities and their meaning. So many people will move from externally driven goals like achievement, approval, productivity, toward those intrinsic values like connection, purpose, autonomy, or contribution. And rather than seeing that as something to fear, we might gently reframe it as an invitation or an opportunity, a moment to pause and reassess, to ask ourselves, what do I want this next chapter of my life to be about? So I want to take a few moments now. If it feels right for you and this is something you want to look at, you might take a moment to reflect on your values. So you don't need to stop what you're doing. Just let these questions sit with you. You might begin by thinking about moments in your life where you felt most like yourself, where you felt most fulfilled, most alive. It could be something simple, a beautiful conversation, time in nature, helping someone, where you're learning something new. And then gently ask yourself, what was present in that moment? Why has that moment resonated for you? Was it connection? Was it creativity? Feelings of calm? That sense of growth, freedom, authenticity, love? And as you reflect, you might begin to notice some patterns, certain qualities that show up again and again. Well, these can be your clues to your values. And if you were to choose just a few, maybe 3 to 5, what might they be? You might also gently ask yourself, what do I want my life to be about? What really matters to me? So if you have a look at the values attached to the episode show notes, or if you Google values checklist, you'll see that there are so many values to choose from. And when you first start looking at the list and trying to identify your own values, you'll probably select many of them. And that's okay. There's no perfect way to do this. Once you've selected a whole heap of values that feel right for you, then we want to try and go back and rate these according to their importance to you right now. Because this values exercise is something that we may do many times in life. Because where we are right now, we might have the same overall values, but at different points in time, certain values are going to be more important to us and feel more aligned to us at different points in life. So of all the values that you've identified that feel right for you, go back and rate them according to their importance to you right now. And then you could label them into, say, 3 categories. You could label them according to a first group where the values are somewhat important to you. You could then go and label a second group where those values are quite important to you. Then lastly, consider whether the rest of the values that you identified fall into group 3, which is when those values are very important to you. So now you're going to have 3 groups of values: somewhat important, quite important, and very important. So of the very important values that you've identified, try and narrow it down to, say, 5 very important values to you right now in your life. Now look, this doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have 5. You can have less than 5, more than 5. But I just want you to think about, for you in your life right now, what values are most important to you. Now, I'm not suggesting by the time you finish listening to this podcast that you're going to have identified and clarified your very important values. Take some time to do it. It might take a few days, it might take a few weeks, I would suggest if this is something that you struggle with and you struggle to identify what values are most meaningful for you, you could consider reaching out to a counsellor or a psychologist, a therapist, because this is something that they can also help you work through. I think it's a valuable exercise to do across our lifespan at different points in time, because the research shows it's really important for our well-being. It can reduce anxiety and distress. It increases resilience. It can help people cope in times of stress and adversity. And it can help you to feel a stronger sense of identity and a greater purpose in your life. So once you have a sense of what your values are, the next question isn't, am I living perfectly aligned with my values? Because none of us are living perfectly aligned to our values all of the time. Life is complex. We all have responsibilities, we have constraints, competing priorities. But I think the more relevant question is, am I living mostly in alignment with what matters to me? And if I'm not, where might I make a small shift? Because it's not about dramatic change. It might be something quite gentle. If you value connection, it might be something as simple as reaching out to a friend. If you value health, it might be something like taking a short walk. If you value learning, it could be reading something that interests you. If you value authenticity, it could be having a conversation and expressing something honestly. If you value calm, it could be creating a small pocket of quiet in your day, even 5 to 10 minutes. It's these small, consistent choices that matter. So I want to talk about this concept in psychology. It's called choice points. And it's the idea that throughout our day, we're constantly faced with moments where we can move toward our values or away from them. And these are often very ordinary moments. You might think of these as small forks in the road throughout your day. Choices like, do I scroll on my phone or do I rest? Do I say yes or do I honor my capacity right now? Do I avoid or do I lean into something meaningful? And again, it's not about getting it right all of the time. No one's going to do that. But over time, these small choices shape the direction of our lives. So I think this is a really important exercise for all of us to do, especially in midlife, but like I said, across different points of our life. And I want to be realistic. Reflecting on your values isn't a magic solution. It won't instantly remove any feelings of being stuck or uncertain, but I think it offers something really valuable. It offers that sense of direction, a way to make more intentional choices, and I think it offers a feeling of coming back to yourself, to your core, to who you really are. So as we close, I invite you to take a slow breath in and just allow yourself a moment of stillness. Your values aren't something you need to search far and wide for. Often you already know what they are, but you may not have reflected on them for a while. So our values are there in the moments that feel meaningful, in what brings a sense of aliveness, in what you're naturally drawn to. And I think living a good life, it isn't about doing more or becoming someone different. I think it's about gently aligning your days with what matters most to you, one small step, one small choice in the direction that is most meaningful for you. So this week, I invite you to choose just one of your very important values to gently focus on. And when you have those choice points during the week, maybe you can take a small step toward living in alignment with that value. Thank you for listening. I hope you found this helpful. I feel like a lot of the time in midlife, when we have those feelings of who am I now, or I'm not quite content, but I'm not sure what to do about it, I think we can really easily start to feel alone. But I want you to know you're not alone, and I want you to allow yourself some time to reflect on your values and what matters most to you, because you deserve to live a life that is meaningful for you. And I think taking some time to reflect on your values is a small step toward coming back to you and the life that you want to live. I hope you have a wonderful week ahead, and I want to send you all beautiful wishes for good health, contentment and joy as you move through the week. Take care and mind your being. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Mind Your Being podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please follow the show wherever you get your podcasts and share it with a friend who might enjoy it too. If you have a moment, please leave a quick review. It really helps others discover the podcast. Thanks again for being here, and until next time, mind your being.